So I know it's not Zakaria, but essentially it's Zachariah. Is that how do you say it?
Zachariah.
Zachariah? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I like when I first saw it, I always went with Zachariah, and I was like, I never actually asked. Like I probably should ask. And then I've heard you say it, and then I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, like there's definitely a lot more letters in there that I'm not pronouncing at all.
There's a lot more letters in there. Yeah.
Zachariah.
Zachariah.
Right?
Zachariah.
Okay. Okay.
Avila? No, Avila.
Yeah.
Avila. I got it.
Yeah.
Okay. I got this. Cool. I love that like 3 years in, we're now figuring out each other's names. Hey there, welcome to Chat with Engineering. My name is Vinod Zachariah. I'm your host as we chat with various team members in engineering and Flowcast to understand what they do and get to know them. Today, we've got Carlos Avila, Senior Engineering Manager at Flowcast. What's up, Carlos?
Hey, what's going on, Vinod? How you doing?
I'm good. This is so awkward because we have to act like we don't know each other, I guess, right?
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, I definitely haven't worked with you for the past 3 years or anything.
Never. You weren't like my first interview at Flowcast at all. No, definitely not.
The tables are turned. Now I get to be on the cast here, so I'm really excited to see what kind of questions you have for me. So.
What would you describe as a job?
Right.
Talk me through your resume. Actually, we could actually go through that. Like, you're an engineering manager at Flowcast. What does an engineering manager do here?
Yeah, that's a good one. And I feel like I should have an equally good answer for it, hopefully. So I think engineering managers actually do a lot. There's a lot going on in terms of what we do in the day-to-day. Some people look at it as like, you're constantly gluing things together. Others see it as removing blockers. Some people see it as career development. You're a career development or a coach in many ways. Yeah. And I think I kind of always go back to this little phrase. I read it once upon a time, and it kind of stuck with me to remind me of the types of work I do, more importantly.
Yeah.
And the phrase is, I feel like a majority of my job is to make sure that the trains look good and they run on time. And so, what does that mean? You're talking about
I don't know what's a train, man. You lost me on the analogy.
Right? Yeah, they're talking about software engineers, we're talking about all these teams and these tech organizations, but what does it mean for a train to look good around time? So, in many ways, those trains are essentially our teams, they're our projects, right? And so when I kind of dive into, what does it mean that they look good? It's like I look at it from a few different perspectives. I look at it on, is the team delivering good work? Are they moving their roadmap forward? Are they doing this in a predictable fashion, right? Like sometimes it doesn't look good to have things be really, really late, right?
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Is the team engaged? Is the team engaged in what they're doing, right? Are they engaged in not only the projects and the type of work they're doing, but in their own career development path? And are we spreading that knowledge around? Are we making sure that we don't have any single points of failure, and we're being flexible in that regard? So, that really handles the do the trains look good portion of it, and then do they run on time is really the business side of it, right? It's like in order to function as a business, we need to be able to set certain expectations. We need to be able to, hopefully be able to kind of give an idea of where we're going, when we'll be there. And, that's why I put those two together. Is my goal is to make sure that the teams are capable and able to do these things in order to meet kind of those business expectations, and thus again, the trains look good and they kind of run on time. So.
I like it. We have to stick with travel analogies this whole conversation. That's the only way this is going to work.
Yeah, only rocket ships then, right? Hydro.
Anything that can be that has an emoji is okay. Is how we'll do it. Actually, optionally, to extend on that, what's a senior engineering manager at Flowcast? What does that mean?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we look at, and maybe just drawing that distinction between engineering manager work and senior engineering management work, is really this one of the things that sticks out is the scope of influence in which you're doing that out. Yeah. That's one of the really big distinguishers. So oftentimes in the management position, you're going to be a little bit more hands-on within that team, not necessarily coding directly, but giving a little bit more guidance on where it's going. You have a lot more time to dig in on particular aspects of projects and help kind of grow careers of the engineers in that respect. At the senior level, you're starting to really do that with other managers.
Right.
You're starting to kind of like go and say, okay, how could we move, instead of one team, how could we move 2, 3, or 4 teams forward at the same time? How could I help this manager again help those teams look good and make sure that they're kind of running on time, and to, using our best engineering practices and stuff, right? So that's one of the bigger differences, really, just the scope of influence you have at that level.
It sounds like you're saying like setting up the systems so that people can do good work, right? And that's really starts to become like part of the influence of that senior side.
Right. Yeah. In that case, if you start to look at it, maybe I need to find a better analogy than trains, but if you start to look at that, it's got to be trains. You start to kind of step back and say, like, how's this whole station kind of performing, right? It's like we need to, there's more than one train, there's multiple, and we can't have them all show up at the same time, or we're going to have some problems on that side. So.
Some issues, yeah. You started at Flowcast as a software engineer. You were like, what number higher were you in engineering?
So it was the second engineer on board. So definitely, definitely a different time then. We were very small. There was a little tiny house, and there was a couple of us that it was a 2-bedroom house with 1 bathroom and a tiny little kitchen and stuff.
I'm just imagining Silicon Valley right now is like totally where my brain just went. Right.
That house is much bigger. So it was very much like that. We had a couple of us engineers stuffed into a back room, working away on some of our earlier products. But so came in as a second engineer on board, and kind of helped us move out a lot of our earlier products there.
And what was that shift like? From a senior software engineer to now this whole new hat called manager.
Yeah, that one's. I think it was an interesting time for us. I think my story there might be a little atypical, kind of just given the growth at the company, compared to maybe like most of the industry that are with the company for a long time. One of the things that was specific to my journey at that time, and moving from an individual contributor into a management position, is kind of doing so proactively. Like at that time, I think it was 2018 is. We started to get around like this 20 engineer mark, and we get up there, and a bunch of people like started lifting their heads up from writing code, and was like, "Hey, what's going on? Like, am I good at my job? Am I doing the right thing? Where am I going?" A lot of people started to have these types of questions, myself included. And I noticed there was a vacuum there. There was kind of a hole there, saying like, "Hey, who's thinking about this type of stuff? If we want if we want to keep our employees, if we want to keep them happy, we want to make sure that we're being productive. Who's thinking about those things?" And so, I approached our CTO, Colin Zantra, on that, and talked to him about like the importance of management, right? Especially in an early startup, you're kind of like, everything's like, "Hey, get the product out the door. There's so much going on." And, management kind of took a back seat to that, and saying like, "Oh, hey, like that's something,
get customers," right? That was the first goal, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so around that time, I talked to him, we formulated a plan, and we said, "Hey, like we put together, like, let's try this definition of management, that a manager is going to kind of, again, be this glue in all these different spots, and they're going to work with, with all these different teams." And, that's where it kind of really started for me.
You bring up this really cool point there. Like, I noticed a vacuum, which is a cool phrase that you just mentioned. Right. And that seems to permeate a lot of people's, I was talking to Chris Clemente, and it's like, I see a gap here. Right. And you sort of like raised your hand and said, "I think I have an idea here." Like, speak to that a little bit. Like, how did that kind of come about for you? Because it seems to come up for a lot of people at Flowcast.
Yeah. I think, especially speaking from the senior EM position, is that a lot of leaders will encounter that. And I think the reason is because there's no answer book. There's no here's the solution to all your problems. Those don't exist, unfortunately.
I just ask you mostly. I just really.
So there's no solution to those things. And I think that's something that a lot of, I guess I'd say that's kind of where leadership starts to be born, is that you're searching for, or at least observing and recognizing that a problem exists. And more importantly, you're proactively bringing solutions to mitigate or resolve that problem. So like, even especially at Flowcast, we have there's a whole idea of like, see something, say something. And I think the thing that really starts to separate engineers in their later careers, or kind of move them through those paths, are the do something aspect of it. Just like if you see a problem in a code base and you're like, "Hey, this is a little bit hard. I should maybe refactor this, or leave a comment, or do one of those things." That's you doing something, right? And I think those same types of things exist on the leadership side, where we're really kind of judged more by, hey, are we identifying those problems? Are we preventing those problems? Or are we are we finding solutions that can be applied to our organization for them?
So this is super interesting. I want to go deeper here. So there's problems that any of us could find, right? How do you know which are the right problems? What's your personal matrix of like, this one is a now, this one, let's, table it. How do you see that?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think maybe my fun answer will be whichever one's scheduled on my calendar that week is really important. But usually, actually, I think like the better answer here is you really got to look at your horizons. You got to look at your time horizons in your role.
I see.
So, for instance, is what change are you looking to see happen? And you got to almost the same way you might estimate, how long it takes to build software. You might want to estimate how long is it going to take to see that type of change within our business, right? So, certain things might be a little smaller, like, hey, we want to improve our culture, so let's have an event this quarter that brings some people together and get them talking, right? So you might look at that and say, hey, that might be a little bit of effort and it could happen now. And we could see results really quickly here where people can connect, and that will compound. Other ones might be a little bit more difficult. It might be like, hey, we want to change the way that we build our software. And so when you're trying to move, multiple teams on an initiative like that, you could say like, okay, that's going to take a lot more. You're going to have to work with a lot more people. It's going to take a lot more time. Might still definitely be worth the effort for what you want to do, but you got to look at the horizon of that and say, what can I do today to move in that direction?
So I think what you're saying is like, there's some stuff, even if the time horizon is big, it's important enough, right? That you still go, okay, this is going to take like this whole like migration from A to B will take a year, but it's still valuable to say, can we do like a chunk of it today? Right. And then take little by little. But then lean towards the things that I think you're saying is like, if they're quick wins, let's just do the quick wins anyway. Right.
Yeah. I think if I boiled it down to like a formula, it really is impact over time.
Yeah.
Right. You're gonna organize the things that you need to do as a manager by the amount of impact they could have over how much time it's going to take you to do them. And that's really kind of the guiding scorecard there. So.
Yeah. And the reason I think that's a super interesting equation is because like that's actually, it doesn't have to relate to management at all, right? It can be also a software engineer as to like, where should you kind of like focus your time? That's probably something that you had that calculation earlier in your career, and that's continued to grow with you as like the different problems that you've kind of looked at.
Yeah. I think it's a strong concept as far as those things. You're always looking at your impact, you're always looking at time. And then even if you try to dig in further, it's like, how do you define impact, right? You could go one level further and say, and the way I've always tried to look at defining that for myself is you got to look at your environment and your skills, right? You got to look at, what is it that I can do to have an impact? What skills can I use? I could use my technical skills. I could use the process of the different types of process I've seen over the years. I could use my knowledge of working with different engineers and apply those in the environment, which is, in Flowcast, right? How can I apply that here to make sure that we're having that impact?
Yeah, and is it the right problem that the company needs me to solve right now, right?
Right, of course.
And trying to get to that as well. That's really cool. Sweet. I really enjoyed all this conversation. I had a question. What do you do outside of work?
Outside of work, kind of a lot of little random things there. I think mostly try to stick. I think the last 2 years have been a little harder because I like to do a lot of traveling, so haven't been able to travel as much. So I've been a little bit of a homebody in that regard. Just definitely reading a lot of books, movies, TV shows. Anything like that, trying to get back to the gym every other week. I'm sorry. I tell myself
that's a start. That's a start. Yeah.
But yeah, so other than that, like maybe like a good book recommendation there that I've been reading recently, for instance, is it's 4,000 Weeks Time Management for Mortals. I thought it's like, for instance, that's just a book I've been into lately, which is of course on the management side, always doing better, trying to manage my time, and look into that. I think they had some really cool takeaways there about understanding that we're not always going to be able to do it all, and really putting our efforts and our energy into the things that
I'm not
mean the most to us.
With us, this not doing it all. I don't follow. That's really cool. I will definitely check that out. I could probably get some good lessons there too. Carlos, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed the time here as well.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.